just do that now before I forget. You can spend just a few minutes kind of introducing yourself, what the idea is, how you came about the idea, anything you feel is relevant or you want to share. Obviously, you've got the slides there, step through those, whatever. Then maybe once you've done that, we could just take some questions, factual, fill in the gaps kind of thing, make sure we understand what, you're all about. And then I think maybe focus on specifically what you're looking for. I mean, if you've got specific requests or areas or, that you're, want us to try and help address, let's get those out, and then before we break up, let's at least get a few things, specific things, what we agree to do. It may be a follow-up call, or it may be just some specific things for us to take away and follow up, online, offline, as it were, individually or collectively. So that's the kind of the scope of the call. Nikki has joined us. Welcome, Nikki. We just started on the introduction. We are recording the call as usual, so any objections do shout out. And really, the background, Nikki, so I'm not going to repeat that, but we're just about to introduce Kate Collins from My Outdoor Classroom, who has an idea, which I believe, Kate, you're thinking about pitching to Catalyst, but you can explain that. And indeed, anything else about the background to it and what you're looking for from us. So over to you, Kate. We'll take you off mute and off you can go.
Okay, so I've been running My Outdoor Classroom for about 5 years, I think. So at the moment, do a lot of work with like parent toddler groups. I don't know if anyone's heard of Forest School, but that's the main part of it, is taking children to the woods and building up resilience and confidence and social skills through meaningful outdoor experiences. So some pictures there. One of them is my daughter, actually, in a little pink coat, climbing a tree. So can I move on to the second slide? Getting called downstairs. I just need to go on to the second slide.
Gone on in my machine. Can anybody see it?
No.
Right, this is the trouble we had when we tried to run Zooms with PowerPoints. I haven't got an immediate solution for this. David, your connection's quite slow, isn't it? Nikki, how's yours?
It's not too bad. It can be a bit patchy, but
right. You see, I'm hosting it because Kate couldn't get it to load on hers. Let me stop the share a minute.
It doesn't matter too much if not.
Right.
Just give it a go. I don't know if you can just go into editing mode. Maybe that would be better, no?
Yes, I'll try that.
We'll just give it another go, Kate, because it's probably nicer to have it.
Right, I've just stopped the share, and I'm going to start the whole thing again.
Okay.
Right.
Something coming up.
Did that help?
Oh, here we go. Yeah,
yeah.
I might have to drop out and come back in each time, but we'll carry on.
Okay. Anyway, so my idea was it's for the Wild Book Club. So it's like a normal book club where either ran through schools or community groups or parent groups where parents meet so they take a book home to read, and then they meet up in a woodland afterwards and then do activities from the book. So it's trying to encourage reluctant readers by linking in with like adventurous books. So they read the book at home, come to the Wild Book Club, and they take part in activities. So I've been doing a bit of research, and I've just read a book called The Sign of the Beaver, I think it is, which is one of the books that I would look at, and it's all about making bow and arrows. It's about a boy getting left in a cabin on his own, and he just learns how to make fire and hunting. Obviously we wouldn't do hunting, but we could probably descale some fish or something. But yeah, so doing loads of adventurous activities to try and get them a love of reading, so they feel really engaged and connected to the book. And then there's lots of other different books we can use. So I got the idea from doing, at the moment, because I do a lot of toddler clubs, so I do that with younger children, a similar thing with younger children. It's not a wild book club, but a lot of the activities do focus around books, because it's quite easy in the early years looking at like the likes of the Gruffalo and the Stickman and other books. But I want to kind of pilot it for older children. Not necessarily to look at literacy targets like a school would do it, but just try and encourage for children to get a love of reading and a love of the outdoors at the same time. So if can you move on to the next slide? I can't really remember what's on this, but it might be useful. So there's just some stats on there. When I pitched this did the RSA pitch, this is just some of the stats that I found around literacy in England, because I think some of it's quite depressing, that about children not reading for fun, and not liking reading and not being able to read well by the age of 11, and obviously that has implications as people get older and restricting life chances because they're less likely to read and things like that. So, and then if you skip on to the next one, I think there's just some stats there about why taking things outdoors can change to make children have a more positive experience of learning. So this I can't remember who did this study, but I think it was a government one. It does say on the bottom, but I can't see it on the screen. It's a government. But about children feeling happier when they're learning outside, and children feel happier and healthier. Teachers find it easier, and impact on behaviour and stuff like that. So that's what kind of got me thinking that we could link it all together to make the Wild Book Club. So I'm going to try and apply for the Catalyst funding to pilot the project. So some of it would be to developing online resources that parents and teachers can go online and look at. And then the other part of it would be doing a pilot project with parents locally, where a group of parents attend sessions to try and get some feedback and evaluation on the project, and if it works, really. So yeah, that's it.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay, that's your contact details.
Yeah.
Okay.
A nice poem.
Yeah, that's very. We'll read that offline. Right, let's kick off then. I've got a few questions, so let me just do those, and then Nick and everyone else. So just clarify the age range, or is there a specific age range, minimum, maximum that you're thinking of?
I think primary age, key stage 2 primary. I think so. We'll be looking at 7 or 8 plus to 11.
Okay, 7, 8 to 11. Yeah. And just on the Catalyst, have you? Because the deadline for the next one is 22nd of January. So is that the one you're thinking of applying for?
Yeah, so I've written it. So that's why I just wanted some feedback on whether, it's something that would link with the RSA, and also looking at taking it further as well past that. So developing it.
So one option is, offline or whatever, if you're happy to share that and you wanted some feedback on it specifically, that's one thing we could, maybe look at.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. Yeah, that'd be really good.
Yeah, because I've got the actual criteria in terms of the evaluation matrix. So I know how they evaluate these things. You may know that, but yeah, so that can be quite useful, because we can just use that to help point you to maybe areas that say, well, you maybe want to kind of, spend a bit more on this or a bit less.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So that's certainly one thing I'm happy to do offline. So why don't we check other people then? Mick, you first of all.
Yeah, there are a number of these projects up and running. I'm aware that Charlotte, one of our collaborators up here, sends her 2 sons to one in Edinburgh. And I'm also aware that the National Trust for Scotland have done a deal with one of these, which I think may even be a franchise, that offers a number of these at different locations. Not all the National Trust centres, but some of them. So you're actually fishing in a pond that's actually quite full. How are you going to make yours unique and different? Or is
when you say full, do you mean forest school full, like outdoor learning full, or do you mean this specific idea?
I think there's quite a lot of them about, but I don't know.
There's not a forest school about.
Yeah, I don't know your area very well.
Yeah.
No, I've been away a long time. Have you done any research on who else are running these in Merseyside?
Oh, well, yeah, because I'm linked in with them, really, because we all kind of know each other, and we're quite. It's not a saturated market by any means. I think there's 2 forest schools running in St Helens.
Right.
there's a bushcraft school at Knowsley Safari Park, and there's a nature nurture nursery. But we're also, I've ran the business for 5 years, and it's quite sustainable business, just looking at it. So this is kind of, the Wild Book Club was the next step up from that, to try and grow it a little bit bigger, to offer something a little bit different, because there are lots of organisations running forest school and outdoor learning, but this is just like the next step.
Good.
Yeah, as you're thinking. And also, because I've been doing it for 5 years, I need a new challenge, because I can end up being like Groundhog Day doing the same thing. So I need something new to focus on.
St Helens reminds me that back in about 1980 something, I was involved in setting up groundwork trusts for St Helens, Merseyside, and so forth. I was on a team pulled in by the Countryside Commission at that time, and it all seemed very new stuff. And all of that, there's loads of groundwork trusts and similar organisations all around the country now. But again, the other thing that interests me particularly at the moment is networks, and how you can think about and maybe map the networks which are going to be useful to you in terms of marketing and support and so forth. So maybe thinking about what are the education parent-child networks, but what are the environmental networks? You've got a lot of kind of different ideas and concepts very creatively intersecting here, I think. And each of those kind of concepts and bag of methods and so on will have their own network of people. And I think things spark off when you can understand and work through the networks, but then start making some cross-network connections. And it seems like the outdoor classroom is very much about bringing together different ideas from different kinds of places. So in my mind, there's a little bit of mapping of networks and people, but also maybe a bit of mapping of ideas, if you like. What are the different kind of ideas that you're trying to get to intersect here, and then who are the people that are going to come together around that? I hope that doesn't sound too abstract.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, because you can't do it all on your own, can you? So it's easier if you can link in with other things, especially stuff that's going on nationally. That if you're looking at parents, and it's good to look at what the bigger picture is, isn't it? And nationally, and linking in with what's going on. So.
Yeah, just on that point, are there kind of around this literacy things? I know it is kind of an issue, and it's an issue I live in France, but there's an issue in France as well, to be honest. Yeah, or even more importantly, in France. France always used to lead on maths. Yeah, France has been for generating lots of kind of but that's really plummeted. So they're more concerned with the maths than the French language at the moment. But nevertheless, it's a national problem. So I'm just wondering whether there are other government initiatives or other kind of things going on there, which would be funding sources potentially, because government.
Well, like they've just, I think today, it's either today or yesterday, the government announced that they're investing more into literacy. I think they've got a big pot of money that they're giving towards literacy for each school.
Could
so
be
that,
something there, exactly.
An alternative way of spending that money would be looking at something like this for reluctant readers.
Right. Sitting in the room next to me is the retired head of the local learning support. I happen to be married to her. You will find in your area, and you should make contact with them. We have a very good project in our Baptist church locally, who take on the kids, to use a phrase we've used on this forum before, reaching the unreachable, take on the kids that others can't cope with. And state schooling is not, or any form of formal schooling, as you probably know yourself, is not well geared up to dealing with these kids. I used to get them at age 16 in the college coming to do horticulture because they benefited enormously from being outside, couldn't tolerate classrooms. So I'm very much with you on this. So your local learning support in the St Helens Borough, whatever it is, I think be very pleased to hear from you. And you should be able to set up some form of agreed referral scheme with them. How are you going to get this certificated and approved? Is there a body that you can go to nationally?
I haven't really thought about that, actually. It's not, I haven't thought that far ahead, but that's definitely something I could have a look at. Because there is a Forest School Association, but then I don't think they've not got that much power yet, I think, because it's a developing organisation. So.
No, I was thinking more of how you would certificate this extra level that you're going to deliver of literacy, which there's an enormous demand for this.
Yeah.
But it would have to be acceptable, shall we say, to the local agencies to refer to you. Okay?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Related to that, Kate and Nikki, maybe you've got some questions then, but I just think, I mean, are you interested? Is this something that you kind of like would package and franchise somehow? Or you may have no interest in that, so I'm just trying to understand would you ideally want to get this to a point where other people in other regions could actually, pretty much take it kind of, download it almost, and obviously with some help or guidance, run it? Yeah.
Because obviously, I can't reach that far. Can reach around Merseyside, but I'd like, it would be nice because to try and link in with, well, even if it was like a bit of where parents could do it on their own and access like an online Facebook, so you haven't got the actual group, like a simpler version, because obviously they can't go off into the woods on their own and making dens and fires because there's restrictions, but there's perhaps a simpler version of like going to the local park and taking part on a simplify. I'd have to read loads of children's books though to try and to do that. But so to go nationally would be really nice to spread the word. So or a franchise way of doing it with other forest school, forest school organisations.
Or even schools, I guess, in the sense that a school itself could do it. You know what I mean? They could start teaching more outdoors and so on, change the culture.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think that would be quite easy for like I said, for early years, looking at the simpler books. So things like the Gruffalo, you could do really simple activities going outside that they wouldn't need any training for. Obviously, to do forest schools and that kind of bushcraft thing, you do need training, but could go national for schools to download stuff that's really simple to go out, just to encourage everyone to go outside, and the health and well-being benefits of doing that and the learning benefits. So
absolutely. Nikki, you got any questions or?
Well, first of all, just a comment really. I really love the idea. It's just takes me back to when I was little, and I used to always be wanting to play poo sticks when I went to, whenever I was on a bridge, it was always poo sticks. So that was, I think it kind of, to me, would be a way of helping to bring books to life. I'm not quite sure, given that you've already been operating in this kind of environment for a number of years, I imagine you've probably already built up a pretty strong network of the types of organisation and groupings that are going on locally. I wondered whether you've got a local sort of homeschooling network. I've got a friend who's in Cambridge, and I know that they've got a really thriving network of homeschooling families there, and do involve some of the outdoor learning. They may be a good source of potential participants.
Well, definitely. Sorry, I was just going to say, because homeschoolers tend to already kind of get the benefit because it's alternative education, isn't it? They do, they don't want to sit in a classroom and be taught in a traditional sense, so they're probably halfway there getting the principles anyway, aren't they? So that'd definitely be something to look at.
I mean, I think as you say, it's about looking at how that can be integrated into other things with people that have already bought into some of the principles of the fact that you don't need to sit in a classroom to learn, even to have beneficial learning. I think similarly, there's an initiative that I believe is sort of nationwide, but in a sort of franchise format, called the Children's University, which there's definitely one in Essex, but I know there's quite a few of them where children who participate in those activities can then sort of gain credits towards something where they go and have a ceremony and a graduation, and it's quite a nice way of kind of in a light touch way accrediting what they're doing. I don't think it tests them, but it secures their involvement. In terms of the Catalyst bid, and I mean, a number of years ago now, I was doing some work on the Catalyst Fund, so I kind of know a bit about it. And one of the key things would be a question about sustainability of the activities. What would your plan be beyond a pilot for how this could be funded?
Well, because my business is set up as a social enterprise anyway, so when looking to the future of it would be, if it got really good feedback from parents, would be either applying for more funding to carry it on to looking at like awards for all the children in need or something like that. Obviously, I don't want to be, the business isn't dependent on funding, or looking at the way my business works at the moment is parents fund, they pay for things. Obviously, you've got a slight problem. I think there'd be a slight problem there that some of the children that probably need it more, parents probably less likely to be getting involved in stuff like that anyway. So it probably might need to be a mixture of funding or going through schools and community groups, so they buy in the service. And obviously looking at, I want to try and develop stuff like an online presence as well, so people can print things off and do it on their own time. It's kind of like a little bit of everything.
I suppose on that question of cost, one of the questions I had was around obviously when you're at school and you're told to read a book, you've usually given a copy. Would you be expecting the families to buy them, or are there ways to either integrate with a local library or potentially or get some affiliate deals so that you're actually getting some contribution back when people buy the books?
Yeah, that's good. I didn't think about that actually. I just assumed providing the books would be part of it. I suppose I could loan it, because it would be similar sessions for different groups, and maybe I could set up a little library and loan them out, the books out, if it's the same books each time. I'd have thought then, do you think there'd be any issues with like the publishers and people that wrote the books with using their books for sessions? I don't know if there would. I'd have to research whether there's any like copyright. And obviously I'm not copying the books are still their books, but if there's any issues,
I think as long as you didn't actually brand the the whole framework, because I know locally they do something called the Stickman Trail and the Gruffalo Trail, and I think if you actually kind of named the book in the title of the event, it might be, but in essence it's no different to a normal reading group, is it? You just have a book that's the focus for this month, and you share the details of it, but you're not going beyond that. I don't see it being a problem.
Yeah, I just thought then that there could be. I suppose that's something I have to think about if I am putting anything online that you're printing off and link. But I suppose it's advertising for them anyway, isn't it? More so
exactly. People are going to buy more books as a result of it, not less, are they? I think.
Yeah, well, because not putting the actual book online. It's just
Mick, you got a question?
Yeah, we in mainstream education, and I left 20 years ago, we were going round the pound shops and we were buying discounted books wherever we could get them as textbooks. And my wife still does that for our grandson. So there is no problem there. As Nikki says, as long as you don't brand it as the Gruffalo something or other or whatever. Okay. Right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to have to go in a couple of minutes. So
just drop out, Mick, but thanks for that, and we'll obviously see you again. Yeah.
Good luck.
Oh, thank you.
David.
Yeah, this may be slightly off topic, but it reminds me that I just remade acquaintance with someone called Sue Thomas, who runs a project called Technobiophilia. And what you're doing is putting together traditional literacies, book-based literacies, and the outdoor world, nature, exploration, and so forth. And what she's doing is putting together technology and the outdoor world and so forth. And she's saying this is not about digital detox. It's about how can you actually use digital tools to engage with nature And I just thought, that might be another strand, basically. If part of what you're doing is obviously about literacy, part of it is about engagement with the natural world environment and so on and so forth. So there might be different routes in. And, people don't have to be reading the book on paper. They can be reading it on Kindle or whatever. But I've just popped up the link to a Facebook page. And I don't know, might be worth.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'll find that really interesting.
The other thing that strikes me again is that I don't know how many books, I mean, the range of books that are available to you, but there are people constantly searching to sort of write books and wanting to write books informally as well as formally. So it's almost like, could you actually write your own stories that are geared to a particular place? You know what I mean? Because an environment has its own names and characters. So that would be the next kind of creative step, is that you get people to actually, because you can start writing at quite a young age, and developing their own stories about a place.
That'd be really good. Yeah, that for the next step in the
exactly.
Well, getting the children to write the book as well, because they'd be really inspired once they'd read a book and done activities, and then the next step they could carry it on, couldn't they? That would work really well. We could use
group thing. I've seen it done in groups. So you get 3 bookers together, they write their own little story and kind of all contribute. And so you just take the whole learning thing to the next level.
Yeah, that'd be really lovely.
So yeah, I'm sure there's any ideas that you could build on this, in the sense of once you got it, evolve it into even more areas.
Yeah, I think definitely that's something I need to add into the bid, because I haven't mentioned anything like that.
Yeah, sometimes. Sorry, David, go on.
No, I was just saying, building on that point, I just wondered how far, as well as just getting kind of straight feedback from young people and so forth, they might actually start coming up with ideas about the way in which you run these events and so on. So make it a kind of co-design process. We're having a little exercise here on that. I don't know, do you think that would work with young people, teachers, parents, other people? Which again builds your network, doesn't it? So if you've got some enthusiasts who are involved in contributing, coming from different kind of directions, then that builds their commitment and
definitely
giving you support, and then finding other people, give them some ownership.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Yeah, that's the way my business works now. I want it to run, and getting people fully engaged rather than just stepping in for a couple of weeks and then going and never seeing them again. It's better to make real changes, isn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking as well, in gardens, it's not the wild outdoors, but it's a stepping stone for many people. It's like, well, why read indoors? Why don't you just go and, because sometimes you just have to tell people, it's like people don't think, oh, it's so obvious, but let's go outdoors and sit on the lawn, you know what I mean? So, or granddad's kind of whatever. So it's almost, you can read outdoors, and you can get around outdoors. It doesn't have to be in the wild. It may be much closer, and than you think.
So, that's quite interesting for like for like a national presence of linking in with little things like that. Take this book outside, and when I don't know, might link in with wildflowers or link in with gardening, and think about that when you're out there, or sit under something nice and just sit and read a book. Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's just raising awareness, isn't it? The possibilities, or
the reading experience. Definitely.
I've got here, if you want, I can just very quickly just summarize the main criteria for the Catalyst bid, and we can share this online, but I'll just read them out, in terms of the thing they're looking at, the key criteria, and these are all kind of weighted, so individuals on the panel will, rate and give you numbers, basically. But essentially, the first thing, is it new? So is it novel? Is it original? If they heard of it before? And these are not in necessarily any kind of order. Social value, and is it aligned to RSA themes? Because the RSA has kind of major themes. So does it resonate and have any relevance to those major themes? Is there a viable business model? So in other words, will it can it generate enough money to cover its costs, and maybe beyond? Is there a proof of concept and the market research, associated to that? So either have you done a proof of concept, or is that a part of the, are you you recognize the need to prove it and to demonstrate it, and have you done the research to support that? Does it have any kind of achievable, measurable local impact? And therefore, could it be kind of replicated? Could it scale and go national, for example? So, or because obviously what they want is things that look like they could, have much greater impact on one sort of location, shall we say, one unique location. I just think that's they look at then the team, who's involved, and really do you have anyone else that you're partnering with who has different skills from you, for example, that are essential to the project, or would make the project more successful. And obviously, if it's the grant, as I think it's like 1 to 2,000 is the low level thing. So they really want to know that, well, is that money enough to sort of catalyze the project? Is that kind of going to actually be able to do something with that money? So essentially, that's the range of kind of things that they evaluate on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's really useful.
Nikki, you'd like to add to that, because you've got, say, the direct experience, and maybe.
Yes, this is a bit of a broader thought that just came to me then. Kate, I think you're aware that this is just the very early stages of this kind of creating an incubator and how this might work. And I'm wondering whether there can be any extra consideration of fellows projects that have had some input from the incubator, given that engaging other fellows is one of the criteria. It's actually saying that this has incorporated the views of several other fellows already and has been tested. And I suppose to me that would be a point in favour, that this is not something that's been created in isolation, but has actually been developed on the basis of some other fellows' input as well. And that might be something that we might want to explore a bit further outside of this, but particularly in this context, because Kate's actually just about to test how this might work. Obviously, I wouldn't want to suggest that you test anything brand new in your application, but it might be something that we could find out a bit more about outside. Brendan, what do you think?
Absolutely, I think it's a great idea. And the other thing that you triggered there is, just this is looking ahead, is that you can formalize that to some degree. It's almost like having a bit of an advisory panel, isn't it? Whatever you call it, but you've got, a 2 or 3 or whatever it is, sort of other fellows who are acting and are willing to act in that sort of that continual kind of advisory capacity. So you can go back to them once a month, or whatever it is, or whatever you think is appropriate, and use them to try and answer your questions or test ideas or validate things or whatever. I think it's an excellent idea, Nikki. That would give credibility and formality.
Just again, building on that. Benefits to outdoor classroom actually benefit to fellows as well, because what we're looking for with the fellowship network and the fellows forum and so forth is kind of ideas and inspiration and so forth for people to cluster around. And this has got so many interesting angles, really, that I think, if we promote a bit on the forum in other kinds of ways, it will spark some interest and input from fellows. Obviously, you have to decide how far that's useful to you, Kate, and how far it's just, setting off all sorts of red hairs and, discussions and so on and so forth. But yeah, how can we use the fellowship to support this and other projects?
Yeah, that could be everything. Christoph, on the other call, was talking about locations and houses, for example, or buildings underutilized in urban areas, which maybe have parks and gardens and so on, and would be willing to host, for example, these sorts of things. Yeah, there's also, I think, there's a renewed interest in sort of some of the traditional outdoor crafts and skills that are dying, which are related to forestry or, all sorts of things. And there's a bit of a resurgence around that. And there's definitely fellows very interested or involved in, trying to rekindle interest in those crafts, for example, which at some level it might be there is interesting kind of things around this, isn't there, David, in the sense of there's some sort of alignment and a network maybe to be used.
And it's picking up on the catalyst theme, isn't it? It's thinking about how do you catalyze a project, but how does a project then catalyze other thinking and connections and so forth? Because innovation quite often comes from crossovers between different interests and people. And one of the strengths of the RSA fellowship, or one of the challenges, is that people are doing so many different diverse things. But if you can begin to get some creative connections, then good stuff happens.
Yeah, and Kate, I mean, one thing that struck me is, I know you're probably most familiar with this age range thing, yeah. You know, these 7, 11-year-olds is great, but one thing to think about is, well, could this scale to older children? Could it even scale to adults? You know, because essentially you've got, you know,
yeah.
why not? You know, adults read and would like to read outdoors.
Yeah, could do. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
just different things, different books, different topics, and maybe introducing skills at a slightly more sophisticated level, working with other people. So that could be a funding.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that for adults, especially looking for, if you know, for people who are living in isolation or like want to socialise and stuff, and then spending time outdoors as well. It ticks quite a lot of boxes, doesn't it, for people?
Or even older people, you know.
We've got skills to share, and
absolutely. And again, so it's worthwhile keeping in the back of your mind, in a sense that might be some other things that you either spin off or
never thought about adults.
Well,
the kind of social connections that come from that. A lot of people's social connections come when they've got young children, from meeting other parents and so on and so forth. But you know, as a grandparent myself, I'm kind of very conscious that you know, young children coming into your life transforms your life in lots of ways, in terms of inspiration and so forth, but possibly in other terms of other connections. So I think there are these other areas of value, I think, that could be catalysed here.
I suppose one thing, well, a couple of things really. There's another fellow-led project called Street Wisdom that you might be aware of, which is not the same, but it's about taking your problems to the street effectively and sort of seeking inspiration outdoors. But they have established quite a thriving network of locally based facilitators, maybe worth trying to tap into. I know at least one fellow that's involved in that project. I suppose the other thing that strikes me, there's a few. I don't know too much about Pokemon Go, but I know how popular it was and managed to bring out people outside of their houses. So again, I think this has a parallel with that, even though it's a slightly more traditional way of engaging people. But I wondered whether integrating with technology, again, not something that I know a huge amount about, but whether there's any links you can make with geocaching, which I know is really popular, and maybe seeking to find ways of incorporating book clues or story-related elements into the caches.
Definitely.
So, which sort of almost creates a bit of a framework and a trail that people can follow as well, and actually get some kind of, again, stamps, rewards for their efforts and their engagement in this activity. Because, as I say, that's just about, I suppose, harnessing ideas that are already out there and popular.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think on that, like the trail idea, where you kind of have the book and you divide it up in chapters, and you kind of do a chapter in one place, but then you have a clue and you have to go to navigate your way to the next place, and then you have the second, you're reading there. When you know what I mean? You got to like create a trail in a game and break it up into bits to get the physical activity as well as the mental activity and the desire to know what comes next.
Just thinking about games as well as network. Drew Mackey, who's fellow based in Edinburgh, I do a lot of work with, principally, particularly around network mapping and so on. But the other area is about games and simulations and so forth. And he's designed, lots of different games. And Drew, when you say to Drew, well, could you design a game around this? He always says you can design a game around anything, basically. And that can be very simple bits of card, or it can be, complex explorations that we're talking about. So, you may be using this in your other work anyway, Kate, various kind of gamey kind of approaches. But, there will be game expertise within the fellowship.
Yeah, definitely.
Is this any use to you, Kate? I mean,
I'm just making notes. No, it's really. Sorry, I was just writing it down because I forget.
I think we've put most things in the chat as well. So if you've missed anything, you've got the links.
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of a little bit of a help for you as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because I hadn't thought about, there's so many other things and there are ways to link in. Geocaching would be really good, like the trails and games and things.
I think just as a general comment, I mean, other people, my experience, like when you kind of review ideas or when you enter for these sorts of things, if you can demonstrate that you have kind of had this 360 degree, so you can see all these possibilities, it gives people a warm feeling that you've got some sort of idea about how it could develop and possibilities, whatever. That always tends to add a little bit of extra strength, I think, to these sorts of things. So I wouldn't hesitate to sort of, share some of that, because it just shows possibilities of
Again, I think that's a way of demonstrating potential sustainability of the activity, even if it's not necessarily financial sustainability on its own. It just demonstrates different avenues by which you could grow and expand this without having to put all the effort in yourself. Which,
definitely.
Could, as you've rightly identified, be pretty challenging and probably quite costly. So, there's lots of ways, certainly in this, you're using natural resources and low cost materials. There's many ways that you could, I'm sure, expand this quite rapidly if it was an idea that caught on. And then it becomes more of a marketing and engagement challenge than anything else. It's valuable, I'm sure, to have a pilot, as you're suggesting, to really refine the idea a bit more, potentially look at what you might package up to try and roll out elsewhere, whilst still being open to the different avenues that are potentially available.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One clarification from me. I mean, are you, so for example, you take a book, and I think if you, in terms of your pitch, and it's always good if you can actually kind of give something concrete as an example, so this book, this title kind of thing. And I'm assuming then you would create like some sort of teaching guide eventually, in a sense, there'd be like some document or something that says how to use this book. I mean, there'd be some sort of link, no? But
that's kind of what I was thinking for the national stuff would be maybe like an online link where how to use this book, what activities can you pick out and do.
Right.
As I say, it's quite some of the books are easier than others to do in that, and a lot of the early ones could do that quite quickly, so because I've done it quite a lot anyway. But so it's, and then the other side of it would be more of a child-led way of doing it. So when I'd be directly delivering and working with groups, and it would be more of a discussion around what do you want to do, what did you find interesting from reading. So it comes from them, so it's like a deeper connection to the book rather than getting told read this book and this is what we're going to do. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 6:46. Any other questions or obvious things? Because if not, we can spend a couple of minutes just maybe thinking about what you want from us, Kate, going forward, and how could we help beyond this call, as it were, other than all the stuff we've dumped on you.
No, it's been really useful, because a lot of the stuff I'm going to go back and have a look through the bids again to add some, not that I'm not relying on that bid, but sometimes putting stuff down in a bid, even if not you don't get that money, it's still there, it's getting your ideas down, isn't it? So even if it just going through the process of writing it, it's like kind of like writing a mini business plan, isn't it? So
exactly. And then if you want to share that, I mean, I don't know about speed the others, but I'm so happy to look at that whenever you think, just send it off, or you could all exactly email it, and whoever's interested could just give some bit of feedback on that, or objectively, as it were, because you're so close to it, sometimes it's hard to kind of see.
That's it.
See the wood from the trees, to use so that's one thing. The other thing, I don't know, in terms of other places to go for this money, I mean, good luck with the catalyst, whatever, but if that didn't work, or even if it did, I mean, have you got any other kind of other options, let's say, for that?
I've not really looked so far, but it would be, I suppose, looking at any other funding, pointing in any direction of any other funding would be useful.
Okay, so something to think about, isn't it, in the sense of what other options there are. Nikki, I don't know if anything comes from you. I know you're probably closer to funding, but I mean, anything obvious that this kind of ticks boxes, do you think, in terms of organisations, or we need to do a little bit more digging, probably?
I suppose you could look at Paul Hamlin Foundation or Esme Fairbairn. I think that there may be a question about the fact that this is just a pilot rather than a rollout of a project.
Yeah.
But I mean, how much would you envisage you need to actually run this pilot? Because to me, as I said, the overall materials cost and that kind of thing doesn't appear like it would be very high, particularly if you're able to reuse the books and test it with a few different groups.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I put in for 1,800 quid for the catalyst, and that was to develop the online resource, basic online resources, and looking at running some pilot sessions. So probably not a great deal amount of money really, to do it, to just run a 6 weeks course with 10 or so parents. So to do a pilot just to see if it's something that works. So
does that include your time? In the sense, is that what percentage of that is your kind of fee, if you like, not fee, but
pretty much that's it really. Yeah, covering my costs to run the session, because other than that, everything else, I've got a Woodland site and I can access parent groups quite easily, so that's not anything. Just copies of the book, I suppose, is the other thing. So it's not a massive cost to run it.
So the real thing from the pilot would be like demonstrating this impact and getting feedback about that. You've got to think about how you're going to measure that, or how do you measure that, both from parents or because that's really the thing from a pilot. I think people would want to see that you've got a model, if you like, that can prove that this is of value against sort of key kind of things. Exactly. So that's a little bit of a sort of the metrics and that which you'd need to sort of think up front, and maybe also include to some degree in the bid, because I think they'll be wanting to see that the pilot could generate enough feedback to sort of justify it.
Yeah.
I mean, what Big Lottery does kind of quick and easy low-level grants called Awards for All. I don't know if you've come across that.
Yeah, I just had one of them, so I can't apply for that again.
It's from, I've just put that on chat, it's from 300 to 10,000, and they promise quite a quick turnaround on it.
I just received one in December, so I can't apply for that one again for a year. So.
Right, okay.
Because it is quite easy to do.
But we can have a think about that, and obviously, we'll see how this goes.
Thank you.
I'm sure there are some other ones around.
You may even be able to look at whether there are any local bookshops that might sponsor it, or even publishers, authors. I don't know what the sort of presence in Merseyside is of those type of things, but just looking at whether you could get some of those people, maybe the books provided free with a sponsorship element to it, that kind of thing. Might be worth exploring, but that's going beyond the fact that it may well be successful in the catalyst, in which case it's more, but I suppose looking to the future, looking at how you might sustain it longer term.
Okay. Well, that seems pretty good. I mean, anything else from you, Kate? Any requests or anything you think that you haven't covered that you want us to kind of try and do a little bit of thinking about, or find other people?
No, I think that's been really useful, actually, just to bounce the idea off people that aren't my family.
You're pretty fed up with hearing about it, Kate. You know what it's like.
It's great, just do it. But so it's been really useful to get some feedback and other ideas and stuff that I've not thought about. So things like working with adults and stuff that I've never even entered my head, and simple ideas that can go national and stuff. So great. No, thank you very much.
Anything else from Nikki or Dave before we close?
I suppose.
No, I mean,
Go ahead, David. Go on.
No, I was just thinking back to groundwork again. Do you have anything to do with groundwork trusts?
No, I don't. Funnily enough, my husband used to work for them quite a long time ago, but no, I've not really worked with groundwork or done anything.
Yeah, I'm not in touch with the St Helens ones, but they're substantial organisations these days, and it might be. I'll see if I can find a contact there anyway. Yeah,
no, that'd be useful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I suppose from my perspective, obviously we have been focusing on Kate for the purpose of this call, but Kate, is there anything that you would potentially suggest in terms of how we might make the incubator more useful, change the format, whatever, because I think, I hope this is okay to drop this in now, but we just to actually, from our own perspective, this is a fellows project that we want to develop as well. So any ideas or input that you have would be really valuable on that side as well.
I suppose it'd be quite nice to find out a little bit more about you all, like maybe a little bio or introduction that way, because I kind of haven't done that, just to know a little bit more about you.
We should have done that, to be honest, at the beginning, but got to skip that. So it's not too late, so we can do it now.
Yeah, after the fact.
To see if it lives up to your expectations, or probably. Actually, just got a couple of minutes. Nikki, why don't you just do a very quickie, because it's useful for Kate probably to know, what your kind of skill areas are and what your interest areas are. So if you want to kick off, Nikki, and then David, and then me.
Okay, well, I have been a fellow since 2013, so I'm quite involved in various RSA projects. In my work, I am a freelance consultant, largely working with social enterprises and charities. I have a strong interest and sort of connection to grant funding and social investment work. And by chance, I am actually an assessor for BBC Children in Need and a trustee for an educational grant-making charity. So your project was particularly relevant to me because I'm very interested in sort of development of children and young people and education. So that's it in a very small potted history. I'm an accountant as well, but I try not to.
It's the first time you said that, Nikki.
Yeah, I don't do the number crunching so much anymore. I try to stay away from that side.
David, thank you, Nikki. David?
Yeah, I've been a fellow kind of on and off for 10 years. I get frustrated every now and again and leave. I'm okay at the moment, but my interests, as I mentioned briefly earlier, about how you map and build networks. Way back, I was I started my working life as a journalist, working on the Evening Standard as an environment planning reporter. And I then did a lot of consultancy in community engagement and setting up environmental partnerships like Groundwork. And the last 20 years or so, I've been mostly working around social technology of various sorts. So I'm interested in what kind of methods you use to engage people online and offline and build relationships. And with Drew Mackey, developing kind of games and simulations. So when we face a kind of tough issue, you say, well, get everybody that's interested in the room, come up with some props and get them to work out the solution for themselves.
Yep, that's the way to do it. Well, I'm a first year fellow, basically. Yeah. So I'm a newbie here. My background is sort of technology. I studied economics and geography. I'm a big outdoors fan, by the way. I live in the south of France. I'm lucky to have the Southern Alps about an hour away. So the weekends, if the weather is not too inclement, that's where I'll be hiking and camping and doing silly things alone or with others, as it were. So I'm a huge fan, and I like reading, and I take books with me, and I read alone outdoors and whatever. So I'm a supporter of getting kids kind of doing that sort of stuff. But yeah, I work for a living couple of companies and lead technology stuff, traditional and otherwise. So all the digital stuff I'm always interested in, and David's stuff about mapping, for example, and trying to get people to use data and visualize data. It is all very, relevant and interesting to me, and really collaboration. I'm a big sort of fan of collaboration, putting people together, trying to get people to work through things. And I naively believe that almost any problem can actually be solved if there's a will and people want to come together and do it. So that's my sort of passion, is trying to to forget all the downside and whatever, but let's just try and kind of all work together, and we're all smart enough and bright enough, and we can do it. So happy to help others with that as well. So that's a little bit about me. Okay. Shall we leave it there? We've got 3 minutes to go, but we'd have to use every minute.
Great. Thank you very much for all your feedback.
And thanks to you. thanks, Kate, to you for bringing us all together. That was really interesting.
Let's keep in touch, Kate. I mean, the forum's there. Yeah, we'll
great.
post this stuff there. You may have questions. Share whatever you want when you want. You know, we'll use our networks, I'm sure, as best we can to make this happen. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
All the best, everyone. Keep in touch. See you soon.